Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into a special bonus episode of Facilities in Focus. It's always a pleasure to be a part of your journey on the internet. And in case you forgot, my name is Mackenna Moralez, and I am the associate editor of FacilitiesNet and your host of this very podcast. But before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items, and I know, just bear with me, it's not going to take too long. If you love Facilities in Focus, please make sure to subscribe, give us a rating, and on some streaming platforms, you can even comment on episodes. Your support means the absolute world to me, and these actions keep these episodes coming. So I'll give you just a brief second to do all those things. And thank you. I really appreciate it. But like I mentioned at the top, this is a special bonus episode of Facilities in Focus. We like to do a season approach here at the podcast, and right now we are busy preparing for season 4, which will cover security and safety. And season 4 is going to premiere at the end of January. And these episodes are some of my favorite yet. They are so good. I keep on talking to my coworkers about them and they keep on asking when they're going to go live. So I'm very, very excited for you to hear them. But that was all my housekeeping items for today. And that wasn't too bad, right? So to get started, I am joined with Caroline Horton. Caroline is a facilities manager with over 13 years of experience in corporate facilities operations in the New York City area. She manages a 75,000 square foot office for a private financial firm and is the former chair of IFMA Greater NYC Chapter's Global Workforce Initiative Committee, promoting the profession to students and educators. But you might recognize Caroline's name because I have mentioned her a few times on the podcast prior to today's episode. She has been on the Women in FM panel at NFMT and is incredibly involved in the facilities industry. But not only that, Caroline also holds a master's degree in facilities management from Pratt Institute, where her thesis explores strategies for increasing awareness of the profession in New York City public high schools to build sustainable talent pipelines. Caroline's thesis is titled A Strategy for a Sustainable Succession by Increasing Facilities Management Visibility in New York City Public High Schools and is available on the ProQuest database. But thank you so much for joining me today, Caroline. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Very excited to connect and excited to share my thesis.
Yay! So I feel like you are kind of an anomaly in this situation. So not many people go back to school to get their master's in general, but you went to get your master's in facilities management, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
What is your undergrad in?
My undergrad is in English,
Okay.
and I focus also on Portuguese too because my family is Brazilian. But I did go back to graduate school with two small children and working full time. So I highly recommend if anyone is looking to pursue a master's degree, do it before you have kids, because it does get it's definitely doable, but it's a little bit more challenging
Oh
too.
my gosh, I bet I have the one and can't even imagine. But as a fellow English major who writes about facilities management, how did you find yourself in this industry?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I think from a very young age, I loved shadowing my father and my
Okay.
grandfather. They would do maintenance around the house, and I would shadow them and just see how, what they were doing, and then they would include me in some of the maintenance around the house, like, okay, well, here is a hammer and here's a nail. So that I think that was really started the interest.
Mhm.
And then when I graduated from college, I had a degree in English and I had classes in Portuguese. I know Portuguese fluent. I speak Portuguese fluently. And then after I graduated from college, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I was lucky and fortunate enough to work as an interpreter, Portuguese English and English Portuguese interpreter.
Mhm.
And And I traveled to different countries. So I went to Brazil,
Oh,
and I worked with joint ventures, business ventures. And then I had an opportunity to go to Scotland for some time, and I worked with helicopters in the helicopter industry, working along pilots, interpreting for them during
that, oh my God,
their.
that seems like such high stakes.
Yeah, it was exciting, but I wasn't on the helicopter. I'm not, that
Right.
I'm not into that point, but I was, in the training with them, and that was so much fun. I got to meet so many different people from around the world, and it was just really interesting. And then when I went back to Brazil from Scotland, I I had this opportunity to work with a facility manager, a retired facility manager. He was a VP for a very high-end, company here in the United States, and he retired, and he went to also high-end value, shopping malls in São Paulo where their tenants were Prada and Chanel, and
Mhm.
I was his interpreter. And I thought it was just such an interesting concept, the way that he looked at urinals. He was looking at the lighting. He was looking at so many different aspects of the space. And as I'm looking further and further away from Prada and Chanel, I was like, you know what? Prada and Chanel has nothing on this guy. This guy is really cool. And then one thing led to another, and I messaged him on Facebook. I asked, I'm coming back to the United States, how do I get involved? And he basically sent me a long list of things to do: join IFMA, go back to school, start networking, find a job, any job in facilities management. And I did. And I found a job at a French bank in facilities management in the department as an admin assistant. I started taking classes, went to NYU for the professional studies. And and then one thing led to another, and now I'm here.
That
So that's the career trajectory.
No, that I think that's really interesting, and I didn't know a lot of that. And for our listeners who don't know, Caroline has been on our Women in FM panel before at NFMT East in Baltimore, and I feel like when we do those panels, you get to know the person a little bit. Knew none of this. Knew none of knew none of it. So was your father and grandfather, were they just like general contractors then, or did they work in facilities?
No, no. My dad, interesting enough, he was with the Corps of Engineers with the U.S. Army. His focus was to build bridges.
Mm,
And then my grandfather, we lived in Brazil at the time, and my grandfather he had his own business, and it was just they just loved working on the house. They loved, like,
they
oh,
love fixing stuff.
they love fixing stuff, and they've seen that it was kind of like their therapy in a way. And so I loved watching them. They were always constantly painting and changing things around,
Mhm.
and I was right behind them the whole most of the time. I was like, oh, let me see what you're doing. And so that's how I think it all started.
So when you took the classes at NYU, was it for a second undergrad degree then, or was it just like classes in general?
It was just classes in general. NYU offers a professional, they offer these classes. You can get a certification at the end of the classes, but I didn't get a certification at the time, but I was just genuinely interested in taking classes in lease negotiation, project management specifically for facilities. I just wanted to learn what is it, what is mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and it just started I just wanted to be, uh, I guess, trying to um, see what it was all about, right?
Yeah, just being knowledgeable of the topic. Because so just tell me a little bit about why you went to get your master's degree, because I think something that is so great about facilities management is that you don't necessarily need to have schooling to be a facility manager. So how did I write this? What made you pursue your master's degree?
Oh, that's a very good question. I always knew that I wanted to get my master's degree in some some, some area. Uh, and part of me, the reason why I joined my company was because they had a tuition reimbursement program. And another part of the reason why I wanted to pursue my degree in facilities management was not many people have a degree in facilities management.
Right.
Um, and also probably don't even not many people have a master's in facilities management. There's a number of professionals that have their credentials, their certifications, but not necessarily a master's degree. Um, Part of that was because in IFMA, I was very connected to uh, a group of aluminum, I think. Sorry, you can cut this off too. How do you, graduates, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, I
Alumni?
alumni, yes, thank you. Um, I was very always connected with a group of people who graduated from Pratt, from their master's degree, from their master's program, and including the chair, Dr. Audrey Schultz. And every time she was, faculty at the time, and I always talked to them, and I was just always so fascinated by their stories of what classes they were taking, what they learned in the program, their key takeaways that they're using in their careers. And also just not just constantly, but every time being asked by Dr. Schultz, when are you coming to the program? When are you joining the
Right.
program? And at the time too, I set up in the IFMA New York City, greater now it's called Greater New York. I always participated and try to coordinate, organize mentorship programs with graduate and undergrad students. And the graduate students in that program I always had a great time with them, and also the undergrad students. But that way, through the graduate mentorship program, I could see or shadow at least some of the classes. And the more that I shadowed the classes, the more I was really interested. I was like, oh, I can, I'm really interested in taking this program, and one thing led to another. So now I'm officially a graduate from Pratt Institute, which I'm really happy about.
Yeah. I also feel like you're such a good mentor. Just
Thank you.
and can you just talk a little bit more about mentoring? I know this kind of relates to your thesis, so we'll get there, but I just want to hear.
Right. I'm glad you brought it up. So uh, the mentorship program, the mentorship program that I worked on at an IFMA in the New York City area was based off of another student's thesis from Daryl Halleckman. She's with NYU, and she had her thesis was about mentorship program, and and this also ties into my thesis research too and part of this conversation that we're having today is that we have an aging workforce, right? Problem in FM, and we could talk about other industries too. And so there's going to be this knowledge gap. And so how do we fill this knowledge gap? How do we build a bridge between those who are retiring and those who are coming into the industry? And so there's a mentorship program. And with Daryl and also with other professionals, Ryan King and Hillary Frisbee, we worked with different schools in New York City and also with IFMA as well, too.
Very cool. So I just have one, a couple more questions about your schooling, and then we'll get into um, your thesis. But how did your academic experience differ from your real world facility management experience?
Oh, that is a very good question. Um, in different ways, right? So there was a lot of parallel and there was a lot of different experiences. But the one thing that really I can take away from it, from that program, from that experience in the graduate program was there was no strings attached, I would say, or there's no, it was just the sky's the limit, right? So I was working on my essay and or different projects and I wasn't tied to compliance or tied to my job per se. I could research, I could talk to other professionals in other countries. It was just this theoretical space that I could work on. And so And and it was a great experience because I could create different things. Like one example of that was at Pratt, they partner with another university in Austria, Kufstein University. And during the pandemic, which was one of the silver linings, I participated remotely in this competition, a student competition, and I partnered in this group with students from Denmark, from Netherlands, from Austria, from Germany, and recreated a project in which we won first place in this competition, and it was this senior daycare. It was on the rooftop of the University of Kufstein, and then we had and it was self-sustainable. We could
Mm.
sell energy from solar panels. We collected rainwater, and it was this project that had not necessarily had anything to do with my job back in Midtown New York City, and I could just create this space, right?
Mm.
And think about different angles and able to work with someone from the Netherlands who had a different perspective about facilities and
Right.
someone an architect from Germany. And so it was a lot of fun because it was all theoretical.
Right. I said this a lot on this podcast, but in order to be a facility manager, you have to be a creative person.
You do. I I do have to say that I am creative with duct tape. I that is something I'm like, okay, if it moves, just put a duct tape on it. I You do have to be creative. It is a lot of fun, and that was something that I really enjoyed at Pratt. Um, I do tell a story that in the beginning of my time at Pratt in the graduate program was uh, my first project was all Excel, right? So I was talking about, present this project, and I was only focused on numbers in this Excel spreadsheet. Whereas my colleagues who had architect backgrounds, they came in with these beautiful decks. They were just incredible. And I looked at my spreadsheet, I'm like, oh, this is so different. And by the time at the end of the program, because I worked with a lot of architect students, I was really proud. I was like, oh, I presented a deck full of, like kind of, it's not to the level of an architect by no means, but
Right.
I was still very proud. It was very visual and very,
Mm.
it was aesthetically pleasing in a way.
You you made it pretty a
Yes, I
little
made
bit.
it pretty. I did. I made
Yeah.
it pretty. Yes.
But like you mentioned, you have two kids. You're in New York City. How did you find that balance between work, life, and school? I personally think that sounds impossible, but you are living proof that it's not.
No, it is possible. And I do joke
That it is
about,
possible.
yeah,
I'm so
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, no, everything is possible as long as you find your why, right? You need to find your why and to say, okay, I am doing this because of A, I'm doing this because of B. Um, and also I have to say I have a very good husband, a really good partner who also was going to graduate school at the same time. So all of us, we basically didn't see each other for 5 years,
Oh,
but
yeah.
which is okay. And, but it's
Ebbs and
also nice.
flows.
Yes, yes, it does. Um, and now we're getting to know each other and getting to know our children again. So it's this introduction to family life. Um, but it's really just it's knowing your why. And so it's interesting though because during that 5 years in the program, I had another child during in that 5 years. And my kids
Mm.
are now conditioned to when I close the door to the room, they're like, "Oh, mommy's studying. Mommy is in a meeting."
Oh,
And
that kind
so
of rocks though.
which is nice, and you're like really quiet and you're like okay. And so but it's a good representation too for their future and to say,
Mhm.
my daughter who's in first grade, she's talking about how she doesn't want to do her homework. And I can tell her like there are times where I don't want to do my homework, and but I have to do my homework. And so I think it's a good way to show, I'm studying, I'm reading, I'm going to school, And most of the time, when she says, I don't want to go to school and say, hey, I'm going to go to school tonight, that is where I'm going to go. And so it was really, it was very nice to be an example to them.
I think it is great. I think it's great that your kids can see you be an example because not only do they have a very cool mom who has her master's degree that they got to watch you obtain it, but then you have this job that is in a male-dominated industry. And I know that we could talk about this until we're blue in the face, but that is so exciting that they can see that mom can do it all. That what, like it's hard? My mom can do it.
Yeah, no, I really want them to see that they can do what they want to do, right? Every time because I do come from a military family, my brother's in the military, and when we go visit him on an army base, I try to show my daughter, I'm like, hey, you can be a soldier too. You don't have to. This is not just for men, right? This is also for women. And the same thing for industries. It's also showing my son, it's like, there are women everywhere. And
Right.
so trying to show that to them because, I think it really ties into the thesis of we need to build a pathway into FM and what does that look like?
Right. And so that is a very good transition. It's like you knew I wanted to do that, but tell me about your thesis. What is it all about?
Right. So I'm glad you brought that up. Um, so I'm also really happy that I can talk about my thesis. Finally, thank you so much for listening to this. Um,
Finally,
yeah,
5 years in the making.
exactly. So in a nutshell, my thesis explores solutions to New York City's aging facilities management workforce by proposing high school to FM career pathways, leveraging CTE programs and drawing lessons from the Global Workforce Initiative. So what does that mean? Basically, we all know that we have an aging workforce, right? We can talk about it for many years, but what are we going to do about it? So we have I so basically, we need to start tapping into not only high school students, but even potentially middle school students, and to showcase there is FM, there is a management industry out there, and it might not be as sexy as tech, or it might not be as well known as architecture or engineering, but we are out there. So I took basically my research focused on the New York City Department of Education.
Okay.
Um, I luckily because I live in New York City, and also at the time I was the chair of the Global Workforce Initiative Committee in the New York City chapter. And so when I was working for my thesis or wondering what to write about, I kept thinking it was like, oh, I have tools. Let me take opportunity of being the chair of this committee. I have access to the career guidance counselors. I can talk to students. I have these materials in place. And the question is, what happens? How are we bringing in people into FM? And so I started doing research, and what I found was is that New York City already has CTE schools, and that means career and technical education programs. These programs they blend academic instruction with job-specific training and work-based learning. So they work-based learning programs includes internships, mentorships, and job shadowing. And so at the end of the program, when high school students when they graduate, not only do they graduate mostly with with a high school degree, but they also many programs allow students to earn also industry recognized credentials and certifications. So they're ready for the workforce, right? And they're ready to gain a living, to have a salary, to have benefits. And that's really what we all want to do, right? We want to have a job so we can pay the bills and we have access to healthcare. So I think that's something that a lot of programs offer through these CTU programs.
Is Skills USA out by you guys? Or is that just a Midwest thing?
I think it's mostly Midwest, but please don't quote me on that. My 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 thesis My thesis did talk about USA skills, but I think mostly in New York City, it's mostly with the New York City DOE and the CTE programs.
Good. Because I know that is something, and I've talked to this guy a bunch too, so now I feel kind of bad that I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But that I know that is a program that like encourages students to get into the trades too. But how can partnerships between facility management professionals and educators like those with trades teachers help bridge the awareness gap?
Right. So I think going back to my thesis, I can't answer for all of the country, or I can't answer for everyone, but what my research has found through this through CTE is that so what I did with my research is that I narrowed down these CTE programs. I took the top four programs that New York City offers that is closely related to what FM is now, right? Because FM has gone through an evolution, right? So it went from the person who is the I don't like saying this, but the person who operated the boiler, right, who managed the boiler, and now we're at a now we're a strategic business partner to a firm. And so we're always looking at return of investment, technology. We have evolved, right, as an industry. So I took those four programs in the CT high school in New York City, and I basically did some research based on those four programs. So the four programs that I focused on was business management and administration, architecture and construction, scientific research and engineering, transportation and logistics. And what I found really interesting is that on the bottom, transportation, distribution, logistics, there's less than 5 schools offered in all of 5 boroughs of New York City. Whereas business management administration, you have over 30 or more schools in the New York City area. And then I took the architecture and construction, which is roughly about 20 schools in New York City. And that focuses on these two programs. And then when I thought, okay, how is there any way that we can connect with these high school students, or is there already an existing connection that we could introduce FM? And so what I found was that these high school CTE programs, they partner with nonprofit organizations. And so the nonprofit organizations is that middle person where they partner with professionals, professional organizations like companies who are looking to recruit high school students, and they work and partner with the high school students. So every high school has their own policy. They have their own process. How do they want to introduce their careers to their students? And so it was just interesting is that every school, although they follow the DOE program, they all introduced careers in a different method. So there is one high school that in all high schools introduced careers at ninth grade. And they had either professionals speaking to students, and on career days, there was also career fairs, and which I participated in and introduced, FM as a career choice. Um, and or there's also online resources like the Department of Labor that people can go in and see what the projection is for long-term salary rates, how to get into, and also had USAA skills and different resources and different platforms to learn about how to get into FM or to engineering or architecture as well.
Do you think career fairs are kind of the best way to start at such a young age like that, or should it be like clubs?
I think both. I think any way to get into high school students. I even take them a step further, middle school students too.
Fine.
The research that I found in my thesis was the middle school students are learning or are thinking about what are they going to be doing, right? in their careers. What kind of careers did they want? And so what this one researcher has found was how middle school students are thinking about what their values are, what they like to do. And so let's say there's a student who likes animals, who likes animals, and maybe they want to go into veterinarian. Or there's a middle school student who likes to help people. Maybe they want to go into teaching or they want to go to social work. So it really starts at middle school level of what the children want to learn and what they want to do long term after they graduate from high school. Um, so I think really considering, teaching or introducing trades at that level, and even taking a step further, I think, and this is for the professionals in Philadelphia, there is a high school student, not high school, but there is a middle school teacher who is introducing trades to middle school students in Philadelphia, and it's Mr. Evan Jarrett. He's a middle school trades teacher, and he introduces students to vocational skills, and at middle school level, like safe tool use, offering an opportunity for FM professionals to engage early, right? So
Hmm.
that's a way to um, that's a way to engage with middle school students and high school students, and really, looking at who's introducing these vocational trades to in more an educational setting.
Right. I like that you mentioned middle school because I think that is like the perfect age to get people to thinking about it. Because when I was in middle school, I thought I was going to be a singer. I thought I was going to be like who Olivia Rodrigo is right now. And obviously did not happen. But I remember in one of my classes where they were teaching us how life skills, I guess our teacher had us write down what we wanted to be. And I wrote, I wanted to be a singer. Maybe I wrote, I wanted to be a teacher because maybe that seems a lot more practical. But the kid next to me said that he wanted to own a pet store. And our teacher said that that wasn't a good career option and that he needed to choose something more realistic. And I was like, but I think I could be a singer and he can't own a pet store. And so I don't understand why shut down someone's dreams or make any career option not seem viable
Mhm.
whatsoever.
No, no, I think you make a very good point, and I think and I'm so sorry that that happened to this person because, you know, maybe it's not viable or maybe it is viable at the time, but I think fostering or having that idea and say, okay, you want to own a pet store. Maybe this person would be a great business person, a great business professional. Why not introduce them to math and to economics? It's clearly there's something there that intrigues that person to do business. If singing, if it, I think you went in, although you're not a singer, but you're still doing something creative. You're an editor to a magazine. So I think there's that creativity side. So it's it's unfortunate that there are adults that are trying to say, well, maybe this is not great, maybe this is another an opportunity. But I'm hoping that the person said that in good faith and trying to prepare students for the real world probably too.
Maybe. And I hope he opened up a pet store just
Yeah.
purely out of spite. I think he moved away
Oh.
after that year. But as someone who has a degree in facilities management and is trying to get the next generation of facility managers out there, do you believe that they need a degree in order to thrive?
I think it depends on what industry they're looking to get into. Um, it's that is that question, right? I can tell you that I graduated sadly from Pratt, and the last group of facility managers. Unfortunately, Pratt closed their facility management program because we don't
Oh,
have, right, because not many people are going into to academics or to get a degree. So it's, it I think it depends on what you want to do. I see and I know managers, senior VPs in this industry who don't have a degree in FM or don't have a degree at all, and they're succeeding and they're moving up in the ladder. they are networking, they are taking courses, they're taking credentials. So I think it all depends on what is best for what you want to do. It's best for where you live. It's best for what industry you are in. And it's best for what you want to do, right? Long term. So I think it really that's a very personal choice too.
Right. And I know that we've talked about this just a little bit, but something that I heard a lot at IFMA's World Workplace show this past summer is that facilities management is a hidden career. And I really do believe that because people, like most people that I've interviewed, would say that the industry found them. That's kind of how it happened to you too. But why do you think facilities management remains so invisible compared to other trade industries?
That's a very good question. You have a lot of good questions. I
Thank you.
you're
My
very
job.
no, see creative side. I think that FM facilities management is not known very well with the younger, I would say with the younger generation. I can tell you that well, every time I spoke to students, and I spoke to more than 200 students for my research, and every time I went into a classroom where I talked to people, talked to students at career fairs, I would ask the first question is, who here knows about facilities management? And no one rose a hand, of course. So which I was sad, but at the same time, I would start asking questions about so why do you think that there's that exit sign, right? So what does that exit
Mm.
sign mean? Does anyone know how it got there? Why do we have it? Um, and I think the more that I started telling them about facility management, the more that they were interested and they were I would say the majority of people was like, I didn't know about this. How do I find out more information about it? So there is interest there. But I think that FM facilities management, I think it goes under the radar.
Mhm.
We're not I don't know about today, but I know that the evolution, right? The evolution was it's more janitorial, more in the bottom part of the business. But now, we have AI, we have technology, we're more business-minded, financial return on investment. We're more strategically partnered, and we're looking at space through talent retention. What is, I maybe this is not the best time to say this, but DEI, recruiting, and so forth. So it's more about how do we position ourselves to say, hey, we're here, we exist, and
Right.
we're also as important as an architect. We're also as important as an engineer because most of the time, I think, my colleagues are mostly owner reps, right? So
Right.
we're representing the business, we're representing owners. So we are going at the table through different perspectives as well.
Well, earlier you also said that facility managers are strategic partners for their buildings. And I think that was like a genius statement to make because it's true. You're turning to your facility manager when you're planning your budget for the season because you need to know what needs to be fixed. There's the cost of it, and that is when the partnership comes into play.
Right. And it's interesting, going back to the research, right? So my thesis is that there are a lot of different facility management departments in and also the New York City DOE that I did interview to say, okay, so what is your retention like? What do you do for your retention? And there was one school that was really interesting, a high school, and because they face also the same challenges with an aging workforce, they started recruiting high school students from the school. And of some of the high school students that didn't know what they wanted to do, they were the facility manager or the FM team started talking to students and saying, hey, would you be interested in joining our team? And that's how they found talent and they were able to continue being, an active, strategic partner because they were able to recruit talent within with the student body. And it was great because the students knew the school, they knew the team, and they came out with a job and benefits. And so it was a win-win situation as well.
And then I know you have been on the Women in FM panel in the past. We've already talked about it, but and I may have already asked you this while you were on the panel, but facilities management isn't necessarily a glamorous or a sexy career option. Do you think the industry should be rebranded in a way? What are some ways we can make it more attractive to the Gen Zers, or I guess Gen Alpha coming up now?
Yeah, no, that's also a very good question. I think I don't know if it should be sexy. I don't know if being sexy is a way to getting, the Gen Zs or other what
Mhm.
what what have you called the next generation into FM. But I think that we need to focus on what it is now, right? We are a strategic partner. Going back to that strategy, we are looking at FM, the built environment facilities, through a different lens, right? We look at business, right? We're looking at finance, we're looking at asset management, we're looking at different ways, and we really need to start focusing on what it is now and not what it was in the past, right? I think that's something that we need to start marketing. What is FM today? There's different words for FM. We have workplace management, we have um, even administration manager, different words that you can call FM, all in its own right. Um, but I really think that just maybe going after those programs, like in the CTE programs that we have in New York City Department, where we have over 30 schools for business management administration, where we can maybe tap into that and bring FM professionals into those schools and saying, okay, you enjoy business, you enjoy finance, you enjoy administration. Guess what? There is a profession out there for you.
Mhm.
It's beyond, what you think it is today was in the past, but what it is today.
Yeah. I think you should teach.
Thank you.
'Cause you're really selling me on this, and I would be a horrible facility manager, and I'm sure anyone who listens would attest to that.
Yeah.
But you're kind of selling me on it. But how can companies balance operational needs with the time and resources required to mentor or train students?
I I think partnering with the nonprofit organizations, the nonprofit organizations that I've researched on my thesis, they have the resources, they have the people, they have the time to train high school students coming out of and coming into these programs, the CTE programs, and coming out with these internships. One school that I also in the Bronx that I interviewed, what they have done is that they partner with a number of nonprofit organizations, one in technology, one in FM, one in computer science, um, different in business. And what was interesting is that if you take computer science, a computer science program for specifically for this research, what has happened is that high school students go into this nonprofit organization and they get trained. They have job shadowing. They go into the firm. They're getting credits. They're going to graduate with a high school degree with an industry certification.
Mhm.
Then what happens is that a group of them, they go into college. The firm will pay for their college degree, and they will come out with the job in that firm with a college degree paid for, already job shadowing, already experienced. They're already ready to start working because they've been trained in high school, they've been trained in college, and now they're ready to join their workforce.
Do you think that's how you see the industry evolving in the next couple of years?
I'm hoping so. I am hoping so, and I really hope that we as an FM, as a facilities management industry, we can pick up on that. There's different silos. That was something that I did research that too, if there is a possibility or if there's already an existing program like that. And there is through which was Global Workforce, the Global Workforce Initiative. Unfortunately, I think it's great. It's a great program because it's a
Mhm.
2-year program. They partner with different schools, they different partner with different colleges, different high schools, and also with under I- with communities of undervalued communities. And so they have this 12-week program where they with the IFMA Essentials course, and then they partner with also with a very large real estate firm, and they do job readiness mentorship programs. So there is a lot of support. There are people that do get a job after this program. There are students that get a job after this program or offered one. Um, but unfortunately, I think that these programs are based off of 1 to 2 year local and federal grants. So there are limits right there. So it's not long term. So this program will be opened in one part of the country and then another part of the country. And again, it's just temporary. So it's not long term. One thing also is that I don't think that we're really talking to each other industry wise.
Yes.
That's the biggest problem is that there are, based on the research that I found, like the architectural and construction CTE schools in New York City, I did find that nonprofit organizations were working with these CTU schools, these architecture and construction, and at the same time, the nonprofit organizations were working with also really well-known real estate companies. And these real estate companies, they also work with facility managers. And so
Right.
there's this there's the different silos, but yet we're not communicating with one another, and we're missing a wonderful opportunity to start channeling people into our industry.
I know that we're running a little short on time, Caroline. So do you have anything else you would like to add?
Uh, I I think we touched a lot. And I'm just so appreciative of sharing my thesis, and I really hope it does help in some capacity for some people who are considering reaching out to high school students, and also to middle school students. I highly recommend looking at nonprofit organizations, looking at these existing organizations, because again, they have the infrastructure, they have the people, they have the resources, whereas a company might not have the time and resources to train someone coming
Mm.
out of high school or currently in high school, going to the vocational schools and really, really advertising, that we exist.
All right. Thank you so much, Caroline. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, McKenna. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Facilities in Focus podcast. Facilities in Focus is a product of the facility market, which houses FacilitiesNet, building operating management, facilities maintenance decisions, and healthcare facilities today. Thank you to our sound and video editor, Paul Ellertson. Thank you to Morgan Johnson for designing our logo. Thank you to Dan Walton, Dave Lubach, Dan Hounsell, Jeff Warden, Jill McDermott, and everyone else at Trade Press Media Group. For comments, or if you are interested in being a guest on Facilities in Focus, please email us at fnpodcast@tradepress.com.